What happens when a royal celebration turns into an absolute PR disaster? It was meant to be a dignified event, a celebration of legacy and service, a routine panel discussion where polished speeches and diplomatic smiles were the order of the day. But instead, what unfolded was a moment that shocked not just the guests but the world. And at the center of it all was Prince Harry, looking like he just walked into a verbal ambush. It all started with a single, seemingly innocent comment from one of the world's most respected actresses, Kate Winslet. But what Kate said was no ordinary remark. No, this was the kind of comment that had people whispering, wondering, and most importantly, watching Harry like never before. Stay tuned, because what happened next would shake the very foundations of the royal family and leave Prince Harry with a bruised ego, a damaged reputation, and nowhere to hide. It was supposed to be just another royal gathering, an event where high-profile A-listers, philanthropists, and celebrities came together to discuss their work for the greater good. Nothing fancy, just a panel about using platforms for positive change. But as anyone who's been in the public eye knows, things rarely go as planned. Enter Kate Winslet, poised as always, a seasoned actress with decades of humanitarian work behind her. As the discussion progressed, she casually dropped a line that hit like a punch to the gut. No raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just a calm, precise statement that sent shockwaves through the room. "It's one thing to have a platform," she said. "It's another thing entirely to use it as a megaphone for personal trauma and grievance." It wasn't just the words themselves. It was the timing, the delivery, the undeniable weight behind them. And while Kate never named names, there was no mistaking who she was talking about. The camera quickly shifted to Prince Harry, and the tension in the room was palpable. Harry's face stiffened, his smile disappeared, and the discomfort was instant. The crowd fell silent, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. In an instant, everything had shifted. Kate's comment wasn't just a casual remark, it was a direct shot, and it left Harry looking like the unspoken target of her cold, calculated words. Kate Winslet isn't just another Hollywood starlet with a Twitter following. She's a woman who's built a reputation for integrity, grace, and a deep commitment to humanitarian causes. When she speaks, people listen, especially when it comes to sensitive topics like the use of personal platforms for public causes. Her words carried weight, not because of the drama they stirred, but because of the quiet power behind them. Kate wasn't trying to start a scandal. She wasn't even raising her voice. Yet the room could feel the punch as if she had shouted it from the rooftops. It's one thing to have a platform, it's another to use it as a megaphone for personal trauma and grievance. Those words cut deep, and Harry knew it. The moment was made even more chilling by the subtle nod from actress Meyer Street, who almost imperceptibly acknowledged Kate's point. That brief gesture, a simple, almost imperceptible nod, was like a silent, shared truth. The message was clear. Kate had said something everyone had been thinking, but no one had the courage to voice. It wasn't just a pointed remark, it was a reckoning. People in the room understood that this wasn't a passing comment, it was a statement that exposed the elephant in the room. And as the camera caught Harry's visible discomfort, it became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a random critique. It was a turning point that would have long-lasting repercussions for his public image. The panel wrapped up, but the damage was already done. Behind the scenes, Harry was a storm waiting to erupt. According to multiple witnesses, the moment the panel ended, he didn't linger to shake hands or exchange pleasantries. No smiles, no casual chatter. Just a rapid walk toward the exit, flanked by his team. His body language screamed frustration, his face contorted, his fists clenched. The tension was thick. One staffer even described him as a volcano about to erupt. And it wasn't long before that volcano blew. Reportedly, Harry was heard snapping under his breath, clearly furious about being the unspoken target of Kate Winslet's comment. It wasn't just irritation, it was pure rage mixed with the sting of public humiliation. What made matters worse was that this wasn't happening behind closed doors. This was all unfolding in front of some of the world's most powerful diplomats, celebrities, and media. The people Harry once sought to impress were now watching him lose control, making his outburst feel even more humiliating. The royal family had always prided itself on keeping things dignified, especially at public events. But Harry's meltdown was the opposite of dignified. It was raw, emotional, and unfiltered. And in the silence that followed, after his tantrum, not a single person came to his defense. No royal aide, no fellow panelist, no one. The absence of any support made his meltdown even more telling. The damage wasn't just about what happened in that room. It was about the deafening silence that followed. What made the situation even more crushing for Harry wasn't just the public embarrassment. It was the cold, deafening silence from his own family. In the moments following his meltdown, when he was visibly unraveling, not a single member of the royal family stepped in to offer support or even a word of reassurance. No one, not even the royal aides scattered throughout the event, came to his defense. The silence was telling. It wasn't just the absence of words, it was a powerful, unspoken message that Harry was, in that moment, completely isolated. The royal family has always prided itself on maintaining unity, especially in public. When one of them stumbles, the rest of the family traditionally rallies behind them, or at least maintains a united front. But here, in the wake of Harry's very public breakdown, there was nothing. No reassuring hand on the shoulder, no whispered words of comfort, just quiet, an uncomfortable, unmissable silence. And it wasn't just the royal aides who stayed quiet. His brother, Prince William, said nothing. His father, King Charles, remained stone-faced. Even Meghan, who had been Harry's biggest advocate and partner in this post-royal life, kept her distance, remaining silent through it all. For someone who had spent years advocating for mental health and emotional openness, this silence hit hardest. Harry had long used his voice to fight for the voiceless, but in this moment, it was as though his family was telling him, without saying a word, that he no longer had a place among them. After Kate Winslet's comment and Harry's explosive reaction, the media frenzy was just beginning. But what truly stunned everyone was the response from Kate's team. Rather than backpedaling or issuing a soft apology, her publicist doubled down, releasing a cold, firm statement. Kate Winslet stood by her words. She has always advocated for dignity, responsibility, and authentic leadership, the statement read, and it made one thing clear. Kate wasn't apologizing. This wasn't just a PR move, it was a mic drop. The message was simple. She had said what she meant and she wasn't backing down. And in doing so, Kate gave everyone else in that room permission to speak the truth, or at least admit what had been hanging in the air all along. Within hours, multiple panelists, some anonymously, admitted they were relieved someone finally said it. Finally, someone had cracked open a door they'd been too hesitant to touch. Meanwhile, Harry's team went into full damage control. Calls to reporters were made, emails were sent, each trying to spin the narrative and claim that Kate's comment had been taken out of context. But the problem was, everyone had already seen the clip. Social media exploded with hashtags like Winslet was right and Prince of Pity, and the comments were brutal. People were no longer sympathetic to Harry's plight. Instead, they were calling him out for turning victimhood into a brand. In an instant, Harry had gone from royal rebel to a media liability, and the PR fallout had only just begun. The narrative was shifting, and Harry was quickly losing control of the story. As the public spectacle continued, it wasn't just the media that began to turn on Harry. It was the entire landscape of his post-royal life. The once dashing, rebellious prince, who had left the royal family to champion causes he cared about, was now increasingly being viewed as a liability. His brand, once seen as a symbol of courage and authenticity, was rapidly becoming synonymous with drama and fatigue. Hollywood, which had once embraced him with open arms, started distancing itself. An anonymous producer was quoted by Variety saying, "No one wants to touch the Sussex brand anymore unless it's to stir controversy." But even that was starting to feel like a liability. The public wasn't interested in the Prince Harry that once captivated them. They were tired of the endless spectacle. What had once been seen as boldness was now being perceived as exhausting. The charity circuit followed suit. Invitations that used to flow freely began to slow to a trickle. High-profile events, once eager to have Harry's presence, began offering him less visible seats, or even considering removing him from guest lists altogether. The royal connection, once a symbol of prestige, was now viewed as a burden. On top of all this, Harry's personal relationships began to feel the strain. Former supporters, even philanthropists who had once heavily backed his projects, started backing away. The message was clear. Harry was no longer seen as a force for good. he was a distraction. The more Harry pushed for attention, the more people began to look for ways to distance themselves. His image, once polished and powerful, was beginning to crack. The pressure on Prince Harry was mounting, and the moment it became truly undeniable was when the royal family, once his staunchest supporters, began to distance themselves. King Charles, already burdened with the weight of royal duties, was reportedly furious. Not just frustrated, but genuinely disappointed by how the King's Foundation event had unfolded. It was meant to be a symbol of unity, a moment that showcased the royal family's commitment to service and leadership. Instead, it turned into a chaotic, embarrassing spectacle, with Harry at the center of it all. But what made matters worse for Harry was that the royal response, or lack thereof, spoke volumes. Unlike previous controversies where the family might have rushed to defend him, this time there was nothing. No public statement from Charles or William, no hand extended in defense. The silence from his family was deafening. This wasn't just the absence of support. It was a clear message. Harry was no longer part of the narrative they wanted to craft. The palace's carefully worded response, a leak to a trusted reporter, was equally telling. His Majesty is deeply disappointed that what should have been a celebration of service became a distraction, it read. No direct mention of Harry, but the meaning was unmistakable. The palace was done cleaning up his messes. The message was clear: Harry had become a liability. As the royals turned their backs, Harry was left to face the fallout alone. The grace period he had once enjoyed was over. The narrative had shifted, and the royal family wasn't looking back. As the dust settled from the King's Foundation debacle, the path ahead for Prince Harry looked more uncertain than ever. Once seen as a bold figure challenging the status quo, Harry was now increasingly viewed as a divisive figure with a shrinking circle of support. The royal family, once his safety net, had made it clear that they were done cleaning up his mess, and the public's sympathy tank had all but emptied. The conversations surrounding Harry's future began to shift dramatically. With rumors swirling about the possibility of stripping him of his remaining royal titles, the question became not if this would happen, but when. Public opinion was already leaning in favor of removing his dukedom, with a growing sense that his titles no longer reflected the duties he once upheld. The idea was formally discussed in the House of Lords, and the momentum was undeniable. Meanwhile, Harry's influence continued to wane in Hollywood and the charity world. The whispers had turned to louder murmurs. His presence was now seen as more of a liability than an asset. Invitations to high-profile events had become fewer, and brand partnerships that once eagerly courted him were now falling away. All the while, Meghan Markle's silence fueled further speculation about the state of their relationship. Were they still united in their post-royal venture, or was the once solid partnership starting to crack? In the end, it became clear that Harry's journey post-royalty was at a crossroads. The grace period was over, and unless he could find a way to reinvent himself, he risked fading into obscurity. The question now was whether there was any way back. In the end, the King's Foundation event became a turning point for Prince Harry, a moment that crystallized everything that had been building up for years. From royal rebel to public liability, Harry's fall from grace was swift and undeniable. What should have been a celebration of legacy and service instead exposed just how far Harry had drifted from the ideals he once championed. The royal family, once his support system, now seemed to have abandoned him, and his own brand, once full of promise, was beginning to unravel. The PR fallout, the silence from his family, the distancing from Hollywood and the charity world, it all added up to a shifting narrative that Harry may not be able to control. And the most painful part? His isolation. For someone who had once championed emotional openness and mental health, the cold silence from those closest to him must have felt like the cruelest irony of all. Now, as the whispers continue, the question remains: can Prince Harry ever come back from this? Has the damage to his reputation gone too far? The grace period is over. The narrative has shifted. And for Harry, the road ahead is filled with uncertainty. What was once a bold new chapter in his life may now be on the verge of closing, leaving him with only the harsh reality of his fractured public image.